Time for Lieutenant Dante to deal with the crisis on Achilles. There are two general ways to get this done. The most popular one, favored by the walkthrough, is the repair method. If we look at our church here, we can demolish it. We have the various fields here where no information because it's not operational. You can turn it off. Okay. Turn it back on. We got the indicator there telling us it's off. And then hit this to repair. Switches from damage to repair, and we've got the red flashing here to indicate that's going on. So we advance forward. And 10-minute slices of time are used, or ticks if you will. We're spending 11 credits per tick to get this repair done, and we can see our repair or damage number there is gradually looking much better. It's 11 credits per tick regardless of how large or expensive the building is, but the bigger buildings will cost longer, just take more time and more money. If you repair something from all the way damaged to no damage at all, it costs between half and 2/3, depending on the building, of the original purchase price. So for our church, it's going to be about roughly 2,500 credits. We start out with 15,000. We can swing that. What we can't swing, though, is repairing everything on the planet at once. Because that would just, a lot of them would be much more expensive than the church. That's just not financially viable with our limited amount of money. So you might look around, try to prioritize a little more. What do we want to repair? What do we want to leave till later? Then you find the fire brigade, which is the key to this whole repair strategy, because the documented feature for the fire brigade is that it can repair any building to operational status, that is 49% damage, for free. So, okay, we don't repair the church. We just repair the fire brigade, we wait for that to get up, and then we have that repair everything else to where it's basically operational, and we can decide where we want to go from there, but it's the most efficient use of our money, although it's going to take longer. Of course, you can't just repair the fire brigade. You would also have to repair the power plant, because having a physically functional fire brigade with no power does nobody any good. So, you get that up and running. Well, this is going to cost several thousand credits, and it's going to take almost 2 days, but you can get there. And you can sell this to the colonists. The previous governor had lower taxes on Achilles, so you can see those are low compared to the moderate ones on the other colonies, and we could maybe stretch that even more. Maybe move these up a little higher, move Achilles down a little bit lower. Try to keep everybody from going too nuts while we wait for this whole process to kick in. Well, is that a good idea? To really get the answer that we have to know things that are beneath the surface, if you will, of the game. Is Imperium Galactica a scripted, linear, mission-driven type of game? Or is it more of an open-ended, dynamic grand strategy game? The answer is yes and no to both. So, if you take your classical RTS type of structure of a game, discrete missions and scenarios, you have your goals to accomplish. You can accomplish them well or you can accomplish them badly, but as long as you accomplish them, you don't do so badly that you lose the mission. You move on to the next mission and you've got a fresh start. You don't have to be perfect, just have to be good enough to get by the listed objectives. And then in your more grand strategy type of titles, you've got a situation where you're really all about that growth curve. You got to accelerate that economic growth curve, compounding improvements, especially early on in the game, and then you accelerate to a point where the enemies can't contain you, and that's how you win those. Well, we've got both going on here. So we start in a very scripted scenario. The beginning situation with Achilles, San Sterling, Noxos is going to be the same every time you start a game of Imperium Galactica. There are a lot of scripted events early on. It opens up into more dynamic gameplay, however, later. And what's not at all obvious immediately is that you have dynamic events going on in the galaxy off-screen right now from the very beginning of the game. It matters a great deal how well and especially how quickly you start. If you take too long in the early stages, or you squander resources in the early stages, you can easily be at a point where later on in the game you're in a bad position or even a suicidally lost position. But you would have no warning about that until you get there, because the more open-ended types of games you usually have, like intelligence reports or status screens, or well, this empire over here has got twice our technology level and we really need to get a move on. Or, boy, our economy is behind the 8 ball. Like, you would have those types of indicators in the game. That's not here. You simply find out when you get to the next obstacle that you can't complete. And so it's of vital importance that we act quickly and efficiently and waste no time. And that really is the fatal flaw, in my opinion, of the repair method. The key skill in Imperium Galactica is managing your planetary economy. If you do that well, you're off to a great foundation start. If you don't do that well, it doesn't matter how good you are at everything else. So, if we take a look at our information here on the colony, the income down here, your tax income will always far outstrip trade income. There's things you can sell, etc. But the lion's share of your income throughout the game is going to be coming from taxes. You need people to pay taxes. So population growth is number one. It is essential. And if we look around, well, Naxos is, or Sand Sterling rather, population growth there. Naxos, population growth here. Achilles, no, we're going the wrong direction. And the reason is we're not supplying the basic needs: living space, medical care, and food. Now, any planet, don't ask me why, but any planet, no buildings on it, completely barren, will have 10,000 hospital and 5,000 food capacity. So can we fix the living space and food problems is basically what we got to ask ourselves here. Let's take a look at our building list. So if we look, first of all, the first thing you have to build in any colony is the colony hub. And if you don't have one, you can't build anything else until that's built. That's 40,000 credits. Well, that's a problem. If we look over here at the numbers on the left, we've got the buildings on a particular colony and the buildings for all of our colonies. So we have no colony hubs here, but the other two planets do. You see, we've got some buildings that are unique to Achilles, but then, the radar, telescope, prefabricated housing, and nuclear plant are present everywhere. We do have housing. We just have to get it functional. Okay, so that we can at least address to a degree. Food's another issue. The hydroponic food farm, we don't have any of those anywhere. And we can't get them until we build the colony hub. So if we do the repair idea, we're repairing stuff for a couple days, losing a bunch of money. Then we're starting to get other things up after that. So it's going to be a while till we've satisfied our basic needs. We've got to save up 40,000 credits for a colony hub. Then we've got to save up the money for a hydroponic food farm. And you've got the construction time for them also. And you're going to be losing population at Achilles nonstop until you've done all of that. We don't have that much time. So we have to get more money now to get capital, to put investment in to turn this around more quickly. Otherwise, our by far our most populous colony is just sinking, and we're destroying that growth curve that we want to have. Now, there's only one way at this point in the game to raise capital. I can't sell any of my ships, can't sell the equipment on them, can't sell my tanks. The only way is to blow up stuff. We need demolition crews to get rid of anything that's not absolutely essential on our planets. Back to square one on Achilles. It's time for the fire sale. Everything non-essential must go. If you look at the military spaceport, it's our most expensive structure. And note the price and our current balance. We demolish this. We've well more than doubled. We got 25,000 out of that. It is always 1/3 when you get rid of a building. We're not going to be able to even use the dev center if we wanted to for a very long time. That's another 17k. And regardless of how damaged the building is, the price is the same. It could be new construction that you've just laid down and it hasn't even begun building yet. It's still going to be the 1/3 price. And actually, anything you sell in Imperium Galactica, you get 1/3 back for it. So we're going to repair the nuclear plant. You're going to want to hang on to that. We are going to keep the prefabricated housing, and we're going to keep the church. And the church is the cheapest type of morale building. Morale buildings work by increasing your morale and therefore increasing the amount of taxes you can have on a planet without the morale going negative. If it does go negative, then your population growth will also go negative. So we don't want that. So essentially, the more effective your morale building structures are on a particular planet, that means you are going to get more profit from that particular location. Colony Hub is got the scaffolding and it will gradually begin building. This is the only other thing we can do here, other than repair the buildings that we're leaving standing until that Colony Hub gets in place. And it does not matter where it is except for organizational purposes, so you're not wasting space on the planet. I could build it over here, and it would be just as effective. This is not like SimCity or other city builders where you want all of your different types of structures to be reasonably close to other structures of different types so that people can, from any place in your city, move around efficiently to do all the different things they need to do. Imperium Galactica does not care. You simply need to have the buildings in the right number, in the right situation on the planet. We are going to reduce our taxes to nothing. That will again help stop the bleeding for our morale and population as quickly as possible. And then we're going to drop it to low also on San Sterling and Naxos. And the reason that I'm doing that is because baseline rule of thumb calculation. If a planet has no morale structures, like these two do not, then you can maintain low taxes while also maintaining the morale that you need. If you have one morale structure, you can up that to moderate. If you have two, you can up it to high, etc. So that's how all that works, and we want to keep our morale in the proper zone, so we're lowering it to low for now. And then, if you look around here, you notice this is a frozen planet, whereas Achilles is desert, and there are other types. We'll get to what all that means later. But also, there are a bunch of obstacles here that we didn't run into on Achilles. We got icy ridges and things of that nature, places where we cannot build. And planets vary greatly when it comes to those obstacles. You only have so much space. And on the ones that have a lot of obstacles, you really need to use the space you have wisely. So this is a good example with the church, because if I'm going to put it here, and then you notice we cannot move in any direction. This is the perfect size building to barely fit in this spot. And there we go. And almost no other building would fit in this location because the church is a very small structure. Unfortunately, we do not have enough cash flow on the hard difficulty to sustain a pure growth strategy. So we have to walk a tightrope for a while between buildings that are going to support population growth, such as dealing with our food supply, and buildings that will support higher taxes, like the church, so we'll get more income, so that we can afford to invest in our planets and get more money, so that we can get more income, so we can invest more in our planets. It's one of those replication types of concepts. And then we're going to do a very similar process over here on Naxos. We'll get rid of that radar telescope as well. We will drop in a hydroponic food farm. And then we also want a church here as well. And we really can't afford anything else at this stage because of the money we're going to spend on repairing and because of what we're going to need to put up on Achilles when that colony hub is in place. So that's our initial spending. We're also going to move the fleet, and the reason we're doing this is, as I've mentioned a bit, Imperium Galactica expects you to plan for things that you have no realistic way of knowing are coming. And because it's doing that, I'm leaning all the way into that. So that's why I was able to take down the radar telescopes, because if we're going to know what's coming, why do we need those up at this early scripted point of the game? On the other hand, I'm also giving Imperium Galactica as much leeway as it can. Some of the encounters and events that we're going to come into are semi-random, and the ones that have different possibilities, I am going to allow the worst possible option to occur. And so both sides of that interplay are going on here. The game's going to give me its worst, and I'm going to give it the worst I can right back, because it deserves it. So we begin to advance time, and we can see our ships in fact moving out. We can't see any of the traders in over here, but that's okay. And if we pop into Achilles, we can also see little bits of building going up here on our colony hub, up to 7%. And now that we've reached noon, we need to take a look at the economic picture a little bit more. We've lost some people here. We've gained some people here. It was 4,800 and change. Now it's 4,900. Again, we see the population growth here. The way this works is 4 times a day, as we're using military time, every 6 hours. So 600, 1,200, 1,800, 2,400 for the new day. You get More people, you get an update on your population growth, you get an update on morale. And taxes are collected, but you don't actually get them yet. You don't get the tax that's been calculated until the very end of the day. So until August 14th, we will have actually no more money, and we'll just have this going down with the repairing that we're doing. One of the reasons this matters is at each of those 6-hour increments, if you have buildings going up, you can now afford to increase the taxes. For example, the church that's going on here is going to allow us to increase our tax another level. And we can do that right now because it's going to be built before that next cycle hits at 1800. And that's really all that we have to do at the moment, except for proceed on further. We're going to slide our way across the system, and we can only see the traders up here. This radar coverage, by the way, is for this planet up here. That's out of our view range, and we've got the little bit from our fleet. But that is just about it. And as we approach this, very soon here, there we go. We're about to get our first event. And now we just have to make sure they give us the bad one.
Commander, we have received a message.
Please help us. We're under attack by pirates.
Whenever a new event in the story occurs, you'll generally get called to the bridge for one of these badly dubbed messages. In this case, there are 4 different possibilities for pirate encounters, differentiated by this alphanumeric designator on the message here. We can try to ask for reinforcements from the Colonel.
What is the problem, Dante? Just a few pirate ships are causing you such a headache? I cannot send any reinforcements now. All our ships are tied up.
In other words, no, deal it with it yourself, which, in retrospect, is actually fairly reasonable. Now, this is the only time that we'll get this specific pirate encounter. They're essentially removed from the pool of possibilities for future pirate encounters once you've already dealt with them. And they vary considerably in resistance, in location, in the rewards you get when you complete them. So all of our planetary activities are still continuing, but we're just correcting our vector to intercept the pirates and save the trader. Good idea to pause once you get into these battles. Let's try the diplomatic approach. A short and fairly pointless conversation. Okay. So the enemies always enter from the right, we always enter from the left, and you would retreat the same direction if need be. We are going to get our trader out of the way here. And we can zoom in and out. I don't find that particularly useful. I like to see the whole battle. We can guard different ships. There's kamikaze options for the fighters, etc. We don't need to use this until later in the game. If we select a different unit, you see we can switch the damage on and off. Select the orders, and it'll show all of our orders given to all of the fleet, which can be useful if you want to double check some things. Fire range for the selected ship, and then grids for more precise movement. I usually have those off and just use the damage bars. So down here, we can see this cutscene, which will loop of a bunch of ships flying around, larger ship in the middle. Then we've got our introductory conversation. This shows details on the current ship you have selected. We've got the overall distribution of forces, 5 and 30 firepower for us, 2 and 10 for them. We're definitely having the upper hand in this engagement. And then a bit of an image on the selected ship. If we take our capital ship, we can see the status of their different modules. So it is important to know here that there's a difference between the fighters and the capital ships in a couple ways. One is that fighters will repair all the way at the end of battle immediately if they survive. That is not true for capital ships. They can take long-term damage. On a long enough timeline, it will be repaired. It's not permanent, but it can be quite a while. And then you can also end up, if they take enough damage, actually destroying, like, for example, some of their lasers or their hyperdrive or whatever, any equipment that you've got on those modules. So you've got to be more careful with them. And then they also get a crew rating, which, if we look at our fighters, they don't. They just have the laser. They don't show crews, kills, or the unit name. And this crew will be upgraded as they get more kills, defined by getting the last shot in that destroys an enemy ship. So, given that the fighters don't benefit from that, we want our destroyer to get the kills here, which is the basis of our strategy. Now, what good does the upgraded crew do? It makes them fight better. That's what the manual basically tells you. They fight better. Now, to be more specific than that, it appears that they at least do better damage, probably better accuracy, maybe damage resistance, I don't know. But in any case, what we're trying to do here is, okay, we've focused down that fighter. Let's do that a little bit more. And I want the destroyer to be over here to cut off their escape. There we go. Now we will switch. The idea is to almost kill the enemy fighters, but not quite, with our fighters, and then we want to run away. There we go. So now we're going to try to escape, and we move the destroyer back. They're going to chase us. Let's go up that way. Maybe we run away, come back down this way. We just kind of want to get into a position where we can eliminate their fighters with our destroyer from directly behind. So, nope, don't shoot. I don't want you shooting at him. There we go. Now here's our destroyer. It's going to knock one of these out, and then the other one will turn to leave. And the point of having the destroyer over here is that it won't be able to. It actually almost got away, but it didn't. So we saved the trader. The trader did not get destroyed. How much damage it takes is irrelevant. We didn't lose any of our fighters, and our destroyer got both of the kills. So that's about as good as we can do in that fight. You kind of need to ignore this rating down here because it's usually not very representative of how you do. And then they thank us for our help, but we get no reward. That is not true of all the battles. We could be at a situation where there's one of them that you can get at this time, which is a big boon in the early game, because you fight one destroyer, and you get 5,000 credits for it. So anyway, that was our first battle, and now we're going to pop back into Achilles, and you might notice it's darker here. There's sort of an overnight darkness effect, which thankfully is not in place when you're fighting battles, because that would make things a little bit troublesome. But otherwise, it's just going to darken and then it'll lighten up when we get to the next day. And we have now gotten to our next day, so let's take a look at some of our information. Achilles continues to drop further. Sand Sterling brought in 880 credits, 854 for Naxos. And there is some a little bit of randomness to this because the tax morale goes up and down a bit, and that is basically representation. The higher the tax morale, the less tax evasion is going on the planet. So we're actually only taking 60% of the optimal amount of taxes on these two. We'll be able to upgrade that amount later on. That's basically what the purpose of police stations is. So if we continue on here, we are actually not that far away from getting our housing physically repaired. Of course, it's not going to have any energy yet, but we're going to want to turn off the repair once it's operational. And a lot of the buildings, including these, there we go. As soon as it pops in to say no energy instead of damage, that's when we want to stop, because it will now function once it gets energy. But a lot of the buildings will work just as well at 49% damage as they will at no damage, so there's no point in us repairing further beyond that. We're just accelerating time here. We can see our colony hub is going up. And now we're going to slow it down again. Almost went too far. There we go. Stopping the church as that's up and running. So now we're only paying to repair the nuclear plant, which is at 59% and continuing on. And then our colony hub is closing in, over 90% built. This is going to be a big landmark for the recovery of Achilles to get this back up and running here shortly. We still have a good amount of cash, but we're going to need that in a bit. There we go. Alright, now that's in position, and the reason I saved up that much money is to be able to build some things. We can take care of the food situation here on Achilles. I'm going to plop that down right next to the church. And we also want another housing. We can throw that down. And now all of a sudden, that's not looking so hot, just a little bit over 4,000. And we're also going to continue having that go down as we proceed through the rest of the day. So once these get up though, we will have satisfied all of the basic conditions that are required. All of the needs here on Achilles and the other 2 planets are set. So stage 1 of our recovery will be in place. I think that's probably a good point at which to leave off for this particular episode. We are going to be getting more instructions from the Colonel going forward. We will delve into some additional and more advanced aspects of colony management. Until then, thanks for watching. Imperium Galactica will continue.